Time.
Too much.
Too much. All right, what's on your minds, guys? Thank you for coming.
How's it feel to be back given the circumstances that we found so we can be doing something
It feels so great. Laura and I and Austin and Blair were really purposeful in wanting to have this today, not cancel this. And to see the smiles on these kids' faces just brings such joy after, obviously a really emotional week or so. At the time we're out here right now celebrating with these kids, celebrating Easter, hunting for Easter eggs, there's a huge crew inside that DGS is leading, continuing to clean, continuing to get the place together, doing demo on that side of the house so we can get people back in this house as quickly as possible. So really just want to thank the kids for being here, for bringing joy in our lives, and thank this crew that's been working literally around the clock for the last week. They're doing great work.
Do you have an estimation on when it's going to be finalized since they've been working around the clock?
It'll be in different stages. I'm hoping to sleep here at some point this week, getting the sort of residential quarters, back in order. And we're going to have an event here with the former governors and first ladies who have been unbelievably supportive. That event will be early May, so we'll welcome people into probably the first floor of the house right behind me, just this section, and utilize the outdoor spaces. And hopefully by some point midsummer, we'll have the state dining room and the areas that were really destroyed back up and running. We'll be able to give you firm timelines through DGS as time goes on, but they're working incredibly hard around the clock. And I got to give a special shout out to Secretary McNeil and Claire Ramsey, who have just been doing great work around the clock.
We can see some of the progress. We can see the dumpsters out
Yeah.
in front, and we can see some of the workers going back and forth. But there's probably a lot that we can't see going on behind the scenes. Is the security tighter here?
They're working through a process now where they learn from what occurred, make changes to both what I'll call the infrastructure and the systems that we employ. We have a third party who's come in to conduct an independent review. Former Colonel Jeffrey Miller of the Pennsylvania State Police, who went on to lead security at the NFL and do many other things in the security realm. So I think between the work of the state police, the work of the independent reviewer, we're going to come through this much stronger. I've said many times, I think, Lauren, maybe even to you the other day at the firehouse, that I have confidence that they can keep me and Lori, our kids, Harper, Austin, and Blair safe. And I have confidence that they're going to learn from this experience and make our systems even tighter.
I talked the other day to former Governor Randall, who said it's a shame to have to do this, but you could increase manpower, increase the number of troopers. Here it says it's a shame because that takes them from somewhere else where you might want them, but you have to protect the governor. Will there be more manpower?
Again, I think it's best to let this process play out, for them to make determinations as to what's needed, both from an infrastructure perspective and a systems perspective. I'm confident that when they present their findings to the four of us and to our team, that we'll make the necessary reforms to keep everyone safe.
What input will you have when you guys make those reforms?
I didn't hear your question.
Sorry, what input will you personally have when they make those reforms?
Look, it's a collaborative process, as it is every single day of our lives when we travel around, all four of us, five of us, with state police protection detail. Every day there's dialogue, every day there's back and forth. Obviously some systems are going to need to change here, particularly at the governor's residence. They'll present their findings to us, and it'll be a collaborative process then as well. But before we switch topics, let's just stay on this. I'll come back to you though. Okay?
You mentioned you'll be sleeping here.
Yeah, soon. Yeah.
Are you going to be comfortable doing that when somebody broke in here for a week ago?
I will be, yes. I'm not going to live in fear. I'm not going to live in fear, and I'm not going to let the fear of, I'm not going to live in fear, period. And I'm looking forward to getting back here. I'm very comfortable here. I'm grateful for the honor the people of Pennsylvania have given me and Lori and our kids to live here. And we consider it our responsibility as temporary stewards of this wonderful home to not just live here, but to welcome people here. That's why we're having this Easter egg hunt today, while we'll have this event with the former governors and others in early May, and why we hope to be getting back to our regular routine here as soon as possible.
Does it still smell like smoke? Is it like kind of going on?
Yeah, they've done a great job. We walked around briefly earlier this morning. It does not smell like smoke in the kind of the living quarters area. We're right here on the first floor. I haven't been in the areas that were destroyed in the last couple days. A lot of demo is going to be going on in there over the next few days, and I would expect, I'm not an expert in this, but I would expect that as you take out the charred remains, as you take out the walls and the ceilings that had both fire and smoke damage, that the smell will dissipate even more.
At least another question. Compared to last week to now, what is the big difference you're seeing as the demo continues going on and cleanup continues?
Well, first off, last week, I mean, especially at 3 o'clock in the morning, you couldn't see through the first floor. There was smoke everywhere. There was water everywhere. There was fire damage. When I was back here the next afternoon with all of you, you all got the chance to look in there and walk through, or at least see the images. A lot of that has been cleaned up. We took great pains to try and save as much of the materials as we could and send it over to the State Archives and the State Museum for them to curate and organize. And obviously now we're in the mode of cleaning it up, of repairing what can be repaired and rebuilding what needs to be rebuilt. And we'll make sure that as that process goes on, at least as it relates to the public-facing parts of this, we'll get you all in there so you can see the change. The crew at CMS, which has done a great job cataloging this so far, is cataloging it as we go through, so you'll be able to see kind of a time lapse of the progress that they make.
Governor, I'm not going to ask a specific security question.
Just one and then two, okay? I'll come back to you in 1 second. If there's a trial, will I be there? Look, I'm going to leave all of that up to the prosecutors. As I've said multiple times, I've got tremendous confidence in District Attorney Fran Chardo, and I've got confidence in the Department of Justice should they choose to bring charges. If my presence is needed by the prosecutors, I'll be there. If my presence is not needed, I don't need to be there. They've asked me for a statement, an impact statement as a victim of what occurred. I provided that to law enforcement last week. And whatever is needed from me, from Lori, from our kids, we're going to make sure we provide to the prosecutors.
I'm not going to ask specifics about security because I know you're not talking about that, but state police has a very good team that does threat assessments of buildings, universities,
Yep.
labs. I'm told over the last several years they've done assessments of this and have passed it off to DGS. They obviously didn't get acted on. Are you aware of that? And what's your reaction?
I'm not aware of an assessment that they made that DGS did not act upon. I'm not saying that didn't happen. I'm not saying it did. But that's a question I would defer to PSP and DGS. That specialized unit has been on the ground here over the last week, making recommendations. I'm sure presenting those recommendations not just to Colonel Paris, but former Colonel Miller, who's acting as the independent reviewer. They'll work together with all the different experts that are brought to bear to make sure that they present to us a final set of recommendations for both the infrastructure and for the systems. I can tell you from an infrastructure perspective, they've already made some changes and a number more will be made.
Has the Department of Justice signaled to you in any way that they plan to take on this case?
They've not presented a signal one way or the other. I think I commented on this to you last week, Jillian. I spoke to Director Patel at the FBI, and I communicated with General Bondi, who I've known for, I don't know, probably a decade or more. They'll make whatever decision that they think is best. I don't think it's right for me, for Lori, for us as the victims here to try and pressure the prosecutors one way or the other. I have total and complete confidence in the prosecutors. I've been a prosecutor, as you know. These cases, you have to examine the evidence, you have to apply the law, and I think it's best to let prosecutors do their jobs in examining the evidence and applying the law without our input unless they seek it.
Governor, do you think any of the work that's going on here will impact your ability to have budget discussions,
Not at all.
negotiations here?
Not at all.
Do you expect any impact on that?
Not at all. In fact, the first floor is very close to being able to be used, and the budget meetings I've had with legislative leaders have largely been in this part of the House and outdoors, and I expect that if the House is needed for budget negotiations, it'll be available. We had a budget discussion the week of the fire, prior to the fire, on the porch. So we'll be using the House as we always do to try and bring both sides together and hammer out a deal.
Time for a couple more here.
Yeah.
Switching up real quick. There's between 250 and 300 workers that Mack trucks are facing layoffs because of the tariffs.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that as you start to see these tariffs go into effect?
Look, I've been critical of these tariffs both because they're going to drive up prices, and we're already seeing that, and because it's going to have companies and individuals, families, keep their capital in their pockets because they're worried about the future. And with the uncertainty and the chaos that these tariffs bring, it's going to mean more capital staying on the sidelines. That's what's happening with Mack Truck based on the letter that they sent to me. A worry about economic uncertainty, a worry about these tariffs in particular, and that's forcing them to keep their capital on the sidelines and making it harder for them to do the important work they need to do to build these world-class trucks. I think it's really important to note that the president has stated his goal with these tariffs is to bring jobs back to America. By the way, a goal I support 1,000%. But Mack Truck's jobs already are in America. They're in the Lehigh Valley. They've been building these wonderful trucks here in America for years and years and years. They're doing everything right, and they're still being harmed by these tariffs. It's really unfortunate. We're working through the Department of Labor and Industry with those workers who are going to be laid off to make sure they get the supports that they need. But I hope that the president is able to rethink, readjust his tariff policy in order to bring more certainty to the marketplace and allow our companies to have the confidence they need to invest capital again. You invest capital, you grow the economy, you create jobs, you bring down prices. That's good for Americans.
Follow up on Zach's question related to the budget. Is there an issue that's going on in the budget negotiations with this former table this year? It's important to you that you're going to speak to at this point in the legislation getting a bill passed?
You know, I've laid out my budget priorities in my budget address. The Lieutenant Governor and I have been traveling all across this Commonwealth, outlining the need to advance the priorities that we put forward. Without getting into specifics, I can tell you we've been having constructive dialogue with legislative leaders of both parties. We recognize that we're going to have to compromise. I've always said I'm willing to compromise. They've shown a willingness to compromise. We've passed 2 really strong budgets with bipartisan support, and we're going to pass a 3rd strong budget with bipartisan support. I'm sorry, can you? I've made clear for 3 budgets in a row now it's important to get something done on public transit. Leader Pittman's been clear that he's open to it, provided roads and bridges are part of the conversation. I've said for 2 years now that I welcome adding funding for roads and bridges. I'm proud of the fact that we repaired more structurally deficient bridges than any state in the entire country last year. I want to keep that record going, and the way we do that is by investing. So I hope in this budget we'll have a robust plan to invest in mass transit all across the state, along with roads and bridges. Thank you.
Will this budget see more money to DGS to pay for whatever security?
Yeah, DGS is going to provide an accounting for the cost to both the DGS side of this, what costs are borne by insurance, what costs are going to be covered through the fundraising work that the former governors and first ladies are doing. We just don't have a full accounting of that yet, but Manuel will make sure that you have that, or DGS will make sure you have that when the process is complete.
One more here.
Can you share any more details about your conversation with President Trump on this?
Yeah, I appreciated that the president called me kind of mid-morning on Saturday. I actually didn't take his call because it came from his cell phone, and I didn't have that number in my phone, so I didn't know who it was. As soon as I heard his message, I called him right back. He was very gracious. He asked how Lori and the kids were doing, talked for a couple minutes about what transpired at the residence. And then we talked about, for maybe the next, 15 minutes or so, about a whole host of other topics. Obviously, I'm not going to get into our private conversation here, but he's attuned to the issues that are important to me. I, of course, know the issues that are important to him, and we agreed to stay in touch going forward.
Can you give us an idea, just because most of us don't know the inside of the residence, what it looks like?
Yeah.
Where were you guys sleeping versus where the fire happened? Like,
Yeah.
what was the distance between the two? The fire chief said door fortunately was closed, which prevented the fire from spreading
Yeah.
even more. But how close were you?
Well, let me talk about the first floor, which is the public space. At that end is the state dining room. You saw the damage and destruction in there. Next to that, so the next room over, as you move closer to where we're standing here, is a reception room for the state dining room. That was damaged pretty extensively from smoke and water, things like that. Both of those rooms are going to be torn down to the brick and the studs and rebuilt. Then there are a set of double doors that lead to a corridor where the First Lady and I each have offices. Those double doors were closed. The fire chief commented that had those doors not been closed, the fire would have ripped through the house into the area where we invite guests and visitors. This is the Erie room here, which had some smoke damage, but no fire damage. We have a family dining room behind us where we have our meals. Again, smoke damage, not fire damage. And all I'll say about the living quarters, I'm not going to get into specifics there, is we sleep up on this. There are rooms on the second and third floor, and thankfully everyone got out safe.
Thank you guys.
Okay, thanks everybody. Appreciate you being here. Happy Easter.